James Maxwell, I am listening and I'm believing this one. Not that what is alleged happened, but certainly something happened here. This is really a horrible story. Alaska Airlines pilot is accused of rape, and he's been grounded as shocking details emerge and the outcry grows. Alaska Airlines told Fox News that the male senior pilot, who is accused of drugging and raping her on an overnight trip in June 2017, has been grounded as new details emerge in the lawsuit by Betty Pina. The pilot is identified by the name of Paul Engelin. He's not flying, was taken off the line immediately after learning of the incident, said Alaska Airlines spokeswoman Anna Johnson. It is our policy to withhold an employee from work during this type of investigation. As it should be. As it should be. While declining to comment on the investigation or the lawsuit, Johnson said, "What we can say is that we are taking this matter seriously. The safety and well-being of our employees and guests is a top priority, as it should be." You know, this kind of stuff obviously cannot be allowed to happen. It's unacceptable to drug and rape anyone, but certainly somebody you fly with, a fellow employee. I mean, it boggles my mind if this is true. So far, Pina is still employed by Alaska Airlines. She's still flying. So her attorneys, representing Pina in Washington State Superior Court, confirmed to Fox News on March 14th that the 39-year-old Seattle woman had first served a lawsuit against the airline February 15th. As the airline failed to answer within 20 days, the lawsuit was then filed in Seattle's King County Superior Court. According to the report cited in the lawsuit provided to Fox News, Pina, by the way, not only flying the big boy airplanes up there, she's a distinguished Army helicopter pilot who flew in combat in Afghanistan, put her life on the line for this country, people. Pina alleges that she was assaulted by Paul, a 50-year-old captain, during a 3-day assignment from Anchorage to Seattle to Minneapolis. It was the first time that Pina, who has been employed by the airline since 2016, so a couple years, met the married Nevada resident who is a veteran with the airline, the suit states. It gets interesting because Mr. Engelin is named in Pina's lawsuit, but not as a defendant. Isn't that interesting? Don't you think you'd want to go after the guy who did this to you? No, she's going after the airline. Interesting. According to testimony in the lawsuit, upon their initial meeting June 4th, Pina and Engelin got along really well, though through a lot of military speak, which made Pina more comfortable. Apparently, Engelin is a veteran as well of the military. So the story goes, Engelin soon invited Pina on a hike and asked if she'd speak to the daughter of a family friend who was learning to fly, some kind of inspiration. Hey, I could do this, you can do it too, I assume. On June 5th, the suit alleges Engelin told Pina that the Minneapolis hotel where the flight crew would be staying had a concierge room. Concierge? How do you say that? Concierge? Whatever. They had a room where the crews hang out, offering wine and pizza for $11. When Pina arrived, she had her first glass of wine without any problem, and Engelin then brought her a second glass of wine, to which Pina began having a hard time keeping her head up and things appeared to be closing in. According to the report, Pina typically feels tipsy after 3 or 4 glasses of wine, not 2. Yeah, me too. It's champagne, 1 glass, and I'm... The story continues. Engelin allegedly again took Pina's glass for a refill. And the next thing she remembers is waking up and being pulled on her right ankle. She then recalls that she said no before rolling over on her side, realizing she was in Airline's bedroom and that she was naked from the waist down. Soon she was freaked out to find her underwear zipped up inside her purse as it hit her that she and Airline had been in the same bed, which had vomit on the sheets, as the other bed did not look like anyone had laid on it. We're fucked. We're fucked. I missed a call from the photo at 10:47 p.m. She claims she heard Airline say. The captain received a message stating that a flight attendant had spotted him walking down the hotel hall with a girl and 2 glasses of wine and didn't feel comfortable flying with him. Now, this could have something to do with pilots, I believe. I don't know what the rules are, but there's a restriction that you can't drink, some number of hours before you fly. So maybe that had to do with it. Unsure. According to the report, Pina went to her room and realized that the sickness was not a hangover after immediately vomiting upon taking her birth control pill the next day. That's an interesting tidbit. She felt foggy as her stomach hurt the worst. So, evidently she stayed with the guy and eventually went back to her room and felt sick. When Ms. Pina challenged Mr. Airline as to what happened, he denied any sexual contact, saying, quote, "You were coming on to me pretty hard," the complaint alleges. Pina was then taken off active flight crew and only recently returned to full duty. Her attorney told ABC News that she did not file a police report on this assault in Minneapolis, but did notify the Airline Pilots Association June 7th, 2 days after it took place. Okay, so this woman by this time, she felt that she was drugged. She felt she was raped, or at least had unconsensual sex, which is the same thing. But she didn't call the police. She called her union. Quote, "To the best of Ms. Pina's knowledge, Airline is still employed with Alaska Airlines and remains a threat to other employees," the report states. Further, the lawsuit charges that not only do Airline's actions as the supervising officer on the flight constitute violations of Washington laws against discrimination, sexual assault, and negligence, but also that Alaska Airlines is liable for his actions. For her part, Pina is infuriated that Airline continued to be employed by Alaska Airlines in the wake of her complaint. "I'm worried about everything I've ever worked for," Pina told the Seattle Times of her fears of the incident, jeopardizing her 17-year career in aviation. "I'm not married. I don't have kids. My career has been my number one." Meanwhile, support for the courageous Pina has been growing on social media. Okay, so I laid out the story, and you understand this as much as I do at this point. So co-workers, he the pilot, she the co-pilot, flying a big jet from Seattle to Minneapolis, touchdown. They go to the hotel concierge room where they're serving pizza and wine for $11. They go in there. She has a couple of glasses of wine and is inebriated before she normally is. The implication, of course, is she was drugged, and she may have been. So the next thing she remembers, that is a phrase you need to take with a grain of salt, people. The next thing she remembers, how many times have you heard this? She's waking up and being pulled on her right ankle by this guy. She claimed she said no before rolling on over to her side, realizing she was in this guy's bedroom, that she was naked from the waist down. She was freaked out to find her underwear zipped up in her purse. And it was clear that Airline and her, she, Ms. Pina, was in the same bed. They'd been in the same bed, and it had vomit on the sheets, and The other bed in the room didn't look like anyone had been on it. An employee of the airline spotted the guy drunk and walking through the hallway with a woman or girl. And she didn't want to fly with the guy because clearly he probably shouldn't have been drinking because there's limitations on that. And eventually when Pina went to her room, she realized the sickness was not a hangover. You understand the implication here, right? She's implying, without saying, she was drugged. She was roofied. And she vomited, and her stomach hurt. This is a horrific story. This is horrible shit. This guy very well may have spiked this woman's drink and raped her. Or maybe there's a different explanation. As I've said a million times, if you're drugged and raped, why wouldn't you call the police? That is the crux of these things. I'm not saying this didn't happen. And I'm not saying this guy is not a fucking rapist and deserves jail time. What I'm saying is the victim of this incident didn't call the police, which means Mr. Engline is not going to jail. He might lose his job, perhaps, but he is not going to jail where he belongs. Doing this to another human being is disgusting, reprehensible, and fucking you need jail time, Mr. Engline, if you did this. But there's no proof. There's no rape kit. There's no drug test. There's no call to police. Even as horrible as this sounds, and it is absolutely disgusting, it is her word against his. This is why, ladies, I can't even imagine how difficult it would be to go through this and then have to go through it again after you call the police, get a rape kit, and all of these other things. But if you don't call the police, the man cannot be prosecuted because there's no evidence. James Maxwell, thanks for listening.